Welcome to Spicy Toast Gaming and our Misfortune Guide for Path of Champions. If you enjoy the video, please like and subscribe. Let's get into it. Starting off with an overview of the champion, just so you can know how they play and whether or not this is someone you want to invest your time and shards in. So first off, we have Swarm. So that's the general overarching premise of the Misfortune deck, is having a bunch of smaller units, spreading out your entire board, and attacking with a full board over and over again to just overwhelm your opponent. Next is Plunder. The Plunder effect is that if you've damaged the enemy nexus, then when you play your card that has a Plunder effect, it will trigger a special effect. So there's many cards in Misfortune's deck that scale with that, and that's another unique mechanic that only she has. Next we have built-in draw. So one of her star powers is every time that you attack, you draw another unit. So you're having all your units that are often dying, they're weak, but you always being able to get more of them, and they're cheap, and so that ties in with the swarm mechanic. Next we have strong early and weak late. So since all of her units are pretty cheap but relatively weak, you're able to overwhelm your opponent and end the game early. But if the game goes on longer and longer, then the opponent is often going to be able to outlast you or overpower you with more expensive and better cards in the late game. So you want to be trying to end those matches early, because that is when you are strongest. The longer the game goes on, the weaker you're going to be. Lastly is a balanced playstyle. So many of the champions either are very focused on spells or very focused on units. Misfortune is actually a pretty happy balance of having a lot of spells you can play, but also having many units that you're focused on as well. So it's one of the more balanced play styles for Path of Champions. Alright, that's it for the overview. Let's go hop in game and take a look at Misfortune and her deck. In game now with Misfortune, she is a 3-mana 3/3. When allies attack, deal 1 to all battling enemies and the enemy nexus, and then she levels up by I've seen you attack 4 times. So that means she has to be on board in order to get the credit towards leveling up. And then if she gets removed, either with a recall or death, then it resets back down to 0. If she levels up, she gets Overwhelm and goes to a 4/4. And now it's when allies attack, deal 1 damage 3 times to all battling enemies and the enemy nexus. And her champion spell is Make It Rain, deal 1 to 3 different randomly targeted enemies or the enemy nexus. And as you can see, all of her abilities are dealing 1 damage. So just remember that for later. Taking a look at the star powers. So the rank 1 star power, nothing but powder monkeys. When you get the attack token, summon a powder monkey. That's the level 1 version. The 3-star version is just every round summon a powder monkey. Powder monkey, as you see here, 1 cost, 2/1, last breath, deal 1 to the enemy nexus, and it's ephemeral, so every round you're just dealing 1 damage to the enemy nexus. 2-star, most wanted, that +1 starting mana, and then when allies attack, draw a unit. So not draw a card, but draw specifically a unit. You are wanting to play a lot of units each round, fill up your board, and attack with a full board. So having this draw built in to make sure you're not running out of units is very important. So this works pretty well for having that constant damage to the enemy nexus, helping you trigger your plunder cards, as well as just filling out your board every round. So in game, it works pretty well together to keep you very aggressive and strong early. So if we look at the starting deck, we get Jagged Butcher, so he's a 1 cost 2/2, and then Plunder, grant me 1/1. So if you've damaged the enemy nexus before you play him, then you get that 1/1 effect. Hired Gun, it's a 4/3 with a pickaxe, and then when I'm summoned, grant the strongest enemy vulnerable. That way you can grab them and get them off the board. So Make It Rain, this is the same as her champion spell, but you're dealing that 1 damage to 3 random targets, and it has the Hex Tech Fabricator. Monkey Business. Now this is actually very important. So It's 2 cost, slow spell. When you summon a powder monkey, or summon a powder monkey, and then plunder, summon another one next round. Now the important thing is that this has the Hextech Fabricator on it. One thing you can do that makes Misfortune very powerful is you can play this when you only have a powder monkey on the board, and it will give that item to your powder monkey. Now items go on every version or every card that's played, not just that card. So if you're playing this with a powder monkey, you can get some items that increase their stats and make them much more powerful, and then every single powder monkey you summon will have that item on it. So even though it starts off as a 2/1, you can scale them up to be pretty crazy high attack and health, and so you're summoning a very powerful unit every single round. So that's something you can try to build around and make your game much more interesting and different, is just making your powder monkeys very powerful units that you're summoning every single round to help you destroy the enemy nexus. I'll show you in game when we do our Galio playthrough how that can happen. So for 3 cost, we have Misfortune, also the Petty Officer. When you play, you get the choice to either summon a Powder Keg or a 1 cost follower. The Powder Keg sits on the board. It can stack up if you have multiple of them, but what it does is when you play a spell, it destroys the Powder Keg to increase the damage of that spell or skill by 1. Normally, you're going to want to be using this to summon the 1 cost follower to further broaden out your board, but if you want, you can go for the Powder Keg. Island Navigator, very strong, especially when you get that Phage. So when I'm summoned, summon a random 1 cost follower and grant it Scout. So again, like the previous card, helping to broaden out your board. You're playing 1 card, we gain 2. But the Scout is very important because Misfortune needs you to attack multiple times in order for her to level up. So this is going to help that. And then Misfortune, when allies attack, so she doesn't actually need to attack to get her ability to go off. So that's going to be very helpful. We have Slippery Wave Rider, elusive. It's pretty expensive though, so you're not going to be playing this too often. I would say if you're in the mid game and you're consistently ending games very early, so like the middle of the adventure, you may want to cut this card and just focus on your cheaper units. Often you're not going to be playing this in your matches, but it is something there and it can help you when you have a lower level Misfortune and games are going longer. Last, we have Monster Harpoon, very good removal, so it deals 5 damage to a unit, and then manifest a card from your regions. And then Plunder, I cost 2 less. So if they have a big unit on the board that you don't think your smaller units can handle, this can work very well to get rid of it. In general, it's a pretty well-made deck. There's not really any cards that you really need to get rid of. They all play together pretty well and have good synergy. The Slippery Wave Rider, little expensive, so that'd be the one that I would cut if you're looking at a card to cut from your deck. Taking a look at her relics, so Luden's Tempest, all of your spells and skills deal 1 extra damage. All of her spells and skills already only deal 1 damage, so Luden's Tempest essentially is doubling your damage, and it really notices. It makes your Make It Rain, as well as Misfortune's ability, actually feel significantly more powerful. Works out pretty well. The Scourge's Stash, pretty good on Misfortune. Since you're summoning that Powder Monkey every round, if you attack or block with it, round 1, and it dies, it'll then damage the Nexus, and you can play Misfortune turn 1. So, works out pretty well. Chameleon's Necklace, very good for Misfortune. You want to have her on the board early, but then also any extra ones you get just turn into a Make It Rain, which work out very well for removal, as well as just chip damage on the Nexus. So if you have any common slots, I would probably recommend using the Chameleon's Necklace. Very good to have. Some other ones that could work. Archangel Staff actually wouldn't be bad. Since she is so cheap, you'd be getting the effect of this for almost the whole game, refilling your spell mana, and since you have some good spells, this could be pretty beneficial. I would not go with any of the level up relics, so often you're not even going to be leveling up Misfortune in a game, so she most likely won't get the benefit from that. Dreadweight Chase Gun, when I'm summoned, create 2 warning shots in hand, so that's a 0 cost, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. Not bad. If you have Ludens, this will do 2 damage, and this can be helpful for triggering more plunder effects more easily. Something definitely to consider. I wouldn't bother with Gale Force personally. You could play with it, you could test it out, but since you need your level up to attack 4 times, you're not going to be able to get that in a single round, so essentially you're never going to level up Misfortune. So if you're wanting to take the Scout because you think you'll level her up faster, it's not going to help you in that way. The one other one I really want to mention is the Grand General's counterplan. So round start, create a fleeting copy of me in hand. So that's both good if your Misfortune gets removed from the board, you have one you can play, but then also her champion spell of Make It Rain is very nice to have, very fun to play every round. It's very good for getting rid of enemy units. So this is one that I would also consider. I think once she hits level 30 and I have my 4th slot, this is probably what I'm going to put in there. Alright, that's it for the relics I wanted to touch on. And now let's go take a look at what support champions you might want to look for, as well as what powers you want to be getting in-game with Misfortune. Taking a look at some of the powers for Misfortune. First we have Raiding Party. When you damage the enemy nexus, grant the top ally in your deck 1/1. You're going to be doing a lot of small hits to the enemy nexus every round, a minimum of 1 with your Powder Monkeys. And so this is just going to help buff up your deck, really make you have some big units later on, and can help you hold on to the edge later in the game where Misfortune might normally struggle if you don't end it too quickly. We have Domination, Round Start Rally, so just letting you attack with a full board every single round, leveling up Misfortune faster, and then also just helping close out the game as fast as possible, which is what you want to be doing. Enfeebling Strike, when you damage an enemy, reduce its power by the damage dealt. Again, just helping you win those longer matches. Sometimes units are able to put out a big opponent, and your smaller units can just wear them down every time you block, just reducing their power by a little bit more. This can definitely help you with those longer matches, still come out with the win, and chip away at the enemy nexus. Next group of powers here, so one epic that I wanted to shout out, Explosive Entrance. When you summon an ally, deal 1 to the enemy nexus. Now, this is very good if you've seen my Misfortune versus Aurelian Soul run, which will be linked down below. I got a couple of these, and that really helped me come out with the win. You're summoning units every single round, normally quite often, a full board of them, and so you're able to deal a large amount of damage to the enemy nexus just by summoning your units. This will really help you against those tougher opponents, and if you see this, works very well with Misfortune. Spellslinger, your spells cost 1 less, and Sorcery, round start, refill your spell mana. So like how I talked in the overview, you are a fairly balanced deck with playing a lot of units, but you also have a lot of really good spells. So you want to have the freedom to be able to play those whenever you want, especially the Make It Rains. If you're running Ludens, those can really help chip away at the Nexus and clear the enemy board. So these are ones that are just very helpful to have, not as important as Explosive Entrance or the ones in the previous slide, but if you see these, they're still worth picking up and can really help your run. Alright, that's it for some of the spells I wanted to highlight. We'll go take a look at what support champions you want to get with Misfortune. Taking a look at support champions now. As always, I don't want to just give you a list of support champions for you to pick. I want to give you the mentality of what you want to be looking for with your support champions. So often the first thing is normally who has the best items, but after that, attacks is one thing you really want to look for with Misfortune. And so what I mean by that is, do they have free attacks? Do they have scout attacks? Do they have rally? Misfortune levels up by attacking. Quite often it's pretty hard to level her up. Normally you'll win before that happens, but being able to get multiple attacks in a round is something that's very good to have. So that's something you should try to see in your support champion. Next we have units dying. So because she is a swarm deck, you're going to have many units dying each round, a minimum of 1 with your powder monkey. And so any deck or any champion that can use that to their benefit can also be very helpful. Next is Nexus damage. So you're dealing damage to the Nexus every single round and you're chipping it down. If there's any other units that can really benefit from that, that might be something you want to look for. So on to champions now. We have Quinn. Quinn works very well. All of her units are generally scout, so it helps getting those multiple attacks in and leveling up and destroying the Nexus as fast as possible. Next is Lucian. Very good. He can both get the rally once he's leveled up, and so he can help with the attacks as well as leveling up from the units dying. You can level him up very quickly. Next we have Gangplank. Gangplank, you're wanting to damage the Nexus every single round. That is what Misfortune's able to do. And then they have a lot of synergies together, and they can just work well together to win the game. So these are just some of the support champions I want to shout out. There's going to be many others, but just wanted to give you kind of the tools of what you want to look for with your support champions. Alright, that's it for the guide. I hope you guys have a great day. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching that video all the way to the end. If you did enjoy it, please like and subscribe. We're putting out multiple videos every single day for Path of Champions content. So if that interests you, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and welcome to the channel. Have a great day.